She left you because you stopped leading. That might sound harsh, but it is the truth most men don't want to hear. In the beginning, you showed up with confidence, drive, and a sense of purpose. You made decisions, you had a plan, and you moved through life with a certainty that drew her to you. It made her feel secure, inspired, and excited. But somewhere along the way, you lost that edge. Maybe you got comfortable, maybe you started to believe she would always be there no matter what, or maybe you simply let go of your own mission. Slowly, you started handing over the power, asking her what to do next, waiting for her approval on every move, doubting yourself until your own hesitation became the only thing she could see. What men sometimes forget is that a woman does not want to lead you. She does not want to take on the masculine role in the relationship, carrying the weight of all the decisions and steering the direction of both your lives. That does not feel safe to her, even if she tells you she wants to be equal or in charge. A woman will always test you to see if you stand firm. When you stopped leading, you failed that test. Every time you passed off responsibility to her, every time you hesitated, every time you let life push you around without fighting back, she felt the masculine strength inside you slipping away. It made her anxious, it made her doubt you, it made her question whether you could handle her, protect her, and keep her anchored. That anxiety is something she may not have even been able to put into words. All she knew was that the spark was dying, that the man who once stood tall now looked lost, and the fire she admired had turned into indecision. As a woman watches that transformation, she starts to feel alone. Even if you are right next to her, her respect begins to crumble, and when respect dies, follows. This is why you saw her grow cold, emotionally why she stopped being affectionate, why she looked away instead of leaning in. You thought she was just being difficult, but she was reacting to the man you had become. A woman needs to feel that her man is capable. That means capable of making choices, capable of handling challenges, capable of setting direction, and capable of protecting what matters. When you stepped back from that role, she felt forced to step forward. At first, she might have tried. She might have taken on the burden, making decisions for you both, carrying the relationship on her shoulders, but deep inside, she resented it. She resented that she had to become masculine to compensate for your lack of leadership, and over time, that resentment turned into disgust. She didn't want to mother you. She wanted to follow you. She wanted to admire you, to feel like you were someone she could trust with her heart and her life. That trust only lives when you stand in your masculine frame, unapologetic about your goals and your direction. Without it, you became just another weight in her life, another problem to solve, another person to manage. And no woman wants to be intimate with a man she has to manage. It is painful, I know, to realize you were the one who let go of the wheel. But there is power in that pain, because if you caused it, you can fix it. You can become the man who leads again, who holds his vision steady, who makes choices without asking permission, who owns his power and his flaws. You can regain your confidence and rebuild your sense of purpose. You can remind yourself that your masculine energy is not something to be ashamed of, but something to be honed and respected. If you want to win her back, or win the next woman's heart, you must lead. Lead your own life first. Know where you are going. Be decisive even in uncertainty. Let her see that you can handle your world, because only then will she trust you to handle hers. She left because you stopped leading. If you remember nothing else, remember that. She left you because your emotional neediness became too much for her to carry. At first, you probably thought you were being vulnerable, that opening up about your struggles and your worries was a sign of trust. And in moderation, that is true. Women absolutely want to connect to a man's heart, to see beyond the surface, to feel that bond. But somewhere along the way, you crossed a line. You stopped being vulnerable in a grounded, honest way, and instead started depending on her for every ounce of your worth. You made her your therapist, your cheerleader, your entire reason for feeling good about yourself, and in doing that, you placed a burden on her shoulders she never signed up to carry. When a woman feels she has to be your emotional caretaker, she slowly starts to lose attraction. It is one thing to support you when you are down, to be your partner through challenges, to celebrate victories and share defeats. That is love. But it is something entirely different to be the person you lean on for your very identity. Women want to feel your strength, even when you are struggling. They want to know you can stand back up, that you will fight your own battles, that you have your own internal resources to handle life's storms. When you kept leaning on her for every drop of reassurance, every decision, every moment you felt insecure, she felt suffocated. That suffocation doesn't happen overnight. At first, she will try to help, she will try to reassure you, she will give you her kindness, hoping you find your balance again. But when you fail to get back up, when you keep bringing the same wounds to her without trying to heal them yourself, you become a weight in her life. Women are wired to want a strong partner, someone who can carry his share of life's burdens and maybe even help with hers. But if you cannot carry your own, she will start to feel like you are another problem to solve. That is not a romantic position to be in. Over time, that emotional neediness strips away the mystery and the masculine power that made her feel drawn to you in the first place. She sees a man who cannot stand on his own, who needs constant validation, who turns to her as the center of his confidence. That is not attractive, it is draining. The harder you pulled her to fill your empty spaces, the more she felt repelled by the pressure. She wanted a partner, not a dependent. Of course, she still cared about you. It hurt her to leave. She probably questioned if she was doing the right thing, if she was abandoning someone she loved. But she had no choice. She needed to breathe again, to feel like a woman in a relationship with a man who could meet her as an equal. Being your emotional caretaker left no space for her to be feminine, playful, or free. She was too busy managing your fears and insecurities to enjoy the love you once shared. Men sometimes mistake a woman's gentle nature for a bottomless well of patience. But even the most loving woman will run out of capacity if you keep drawing on her to fix you. Women want to support you, but they cannot build you. That is your job. If you do not own your confidence, your self-worth, and your personal power, no woman can gift those things to you. When you made her responsible for those missing pieces, she felt overwhelmed, and eventually she had to leave. If you want to avoid repeating this heartbreak, you must rebuild your own foundation, become solid within yourself. Heal the parts of you that crave external approval, develop the confidence to stand alone, and then invite a woman into your life to share, not to save you. When a man is strong on his own, his vulnerability becomes a gift instead of a burden. That is what women truly desire, a man who can open up without falling apart, who can lean on her for comfort but never for survival. She left you because your emotional neediness made her feel like she was drowning. Let that lesson teach you the value of emotional self-reliance, and you will never have to fear losing someone in this way again. She left you because you ignored her silent signals. Women rarely just pack up and walk away one day without warning. Long before she physically leaves, she is already gone inside her mind. But the reason you never saw it coming is because you weren't paying attention. You overlooked the signs, brushed them off, or refused to see them because you didn't want to face what they meant. The truth is, women communicate in subtle ways, in tone, in distance, in a shift of energy, and if you had listened, you would have seen she was already slipping away. Think about it. The text replies got shorter, the affection grew colder, the spark in her eyes dimmed, and her enthusiasm around you started to vanish. You might have blamed stress or told yourself she'd bounce back after a rough week, but these were not random moods, they were warnings. Warnings that her heart was shutting down, that the bond you once shared was eroding, that you were losing her bit by bit. Every time she felt unheard or unseen, she built another brick in the wall, separating you from her. And each brick was a message you failed to read. What makes this even more painful is that she probably tried, in her own way, to reach you. Maybe she told you she was unhappy, though not directly. Maybe she hinted that she needed you to step up, to change, to fight for the relationship. But you brushed it off, thinking she was just emotional, or you decided to fix it later when things were less busy. But there is no later once a woman's heart starts to die. Once a woman feels alone, even next to you, that loneliness grows roots and becomes impossible to uproot. She needed you to notice. She wanted you to recognize that her laughter was missing, that her patience was wearing thin, that the way she touched you had shifted. These were her cries for help, quiet, soft, sometimes hidden behind a smile, but they were real. When you refused to see them, she felt invisible. And for a woman, feeling invisible is one of the deepest pains she can experience in love. Over time, that pain turns into bitterness. She stops trying. Why should she, when you refuse to notice her suffering? She goes from dropping hints to giving up completely, telling herself you just don't care. That belief poisons everything between you until she no longer sees a reason to stay. You might think it was sudden, but for her, it was a long process of checking out, grieving the relationship in silence, and then finally finding the courage to walk away. Men often ask, why didn't she just tell me clearly? But women rarely do. They test, they hint, they express indirectly, hoping the man they love will be tuned in enough to pick up on their subtle language. This is not about mind reading, it is about being emotionally aware, being present enough to notice the energy changing, and brave enough to ask, what's really going on with us? Had you shown that curiosity and presence, you might have saved her heart before it was too late. If you want to grow from this, learn to read between the lines. When a woman goes quiet, it is not peace, it is distance. When a woman stops nagging, it is not acceptance, it is surrender. When a woman stops arguing, it is not agreement, it is a sign she has given up. These are the silent signals that too many men miss until the day they are left standing alone, wondering what happened. Next time, do not let yourself drift into that kind of blindness. Stay present, stay connected, and pay attention to the subtle shifts in her words, her mood, her behavior. If you notice those changes early, you have a chance to repair things before they break completely. When a woman loves you, she will send many signals that she is hurting. It is your responsibility to see them, to listen, to act, and to protect the relationship before she decides there is nothing left to protect. She left because you ignored her silent signals. Remember that silence from a woman does not mean nothing is wrong. It usually means everything is. She left you because you forgot to stay mysterious and attractive. In the beginning, you were interesting. You had your own passions, your own pursuits, a spark in your eyes that made her curious about you. She wondered about your dreams, your ambitions, and what you might do next. That sense of mystery, that subtle tension, drew her in and kept her engaged. But over time you let it fade. You stopped growing, stopped surprising her, stopped keeping that little part of yourself that was yours alone. You became predictable, too available, too easy to read, and slowly you lost the edge that made her desire you in the first place. Women crave a man who is somewhat of a challenge. Not a toxic challenge, but a healthy one, a man who cannot be fully claimed, who always holds a part of his own life apart, who keeps his sense of self no matter how deeply he loves her. When you gave up your mystery, she lost the excitement. You started showing up the same way every day, with no fresh energy, no new stories, no sense of adventure. She could see through you completely, and with that, the attraction began to die. A lot of men think that once they have a woman, they can relax. They stop working on their bodies, their minds, their goals, because they believe love should be enough. But love is never enough to sustain attraction. A woman needs to see you as a man who is still growing, still improving, still captivating. That is what triggers her respect and keeps her desire burning. When you fell into routine, when you let your spark die, you became just another piece of furniture in her life, comfortable but dull, present but uninspiring. She might have tried to revive it. She might have hinted that you should go back to the gym, explore a new passion, or step up in your career. But you ignored that, assuming she would love you exactly as you were, even when you stopped loving yourself enough to keep growing. You let her see all of you, every weakness, every insecurity, every piece of you laid bare without anything left to chase or discover. And while that sounds like vulnerability, what it really did was destroy the sense of polarity that made her attracted to you in the first place. She wanted to see you as a man who could still surprise her, who could keep her guessing in the best way, who would challenge her to rise alongside you instead of pulling you down into sameness. When you refused to grow, you forced her to grow alone. When you stopped expanding your world, she outgrew you. No woman wants to outgrow her man. That feels lonely and disheartening, and eventually it made her question whether she could continue to build a life with someone who was no longer reaching for anything higher. Your mystery, your drive, your ambition, those things are not optional. They are vital if you want to sustain a woman's respect and passion. The day you gave them up was the day you signed the slow death warrant of your relationship. Women do not fall for men who are finished products. They fall for men who are works in progress, men who stay curious, men who keep chasing something bigger. That is what holds her attention and keeps her leaning in. If you want to learn from this, make a promise to yourself, never stop evolving. Never get so comfortable in love that you forget what made you powerful and magnetic to begin with. Keep a part of yourself for yourself, the dreams, the challenges, the inner drive. Let her see you moving towards something bold, something that inspires even you, because that is what will inspire her to stay. In the end, she left because you forgot how to be a man worth wondering about. You became too easy, too open, too routine, and it made you boring in her eyes. If you can hold onto your mystery and stay attractive through growth and purpose, you will never have to worry about her losing interest again. She left you because you failed to set and hold boundaries. You thought being endlessly patient, forgiving, and accommodating would make her love you more. You believed saying yes to everything she wanted and tolerating behavior that made you uncomfortable would prove how deeply you cared. But what you didn't see was how your lack of boundaries made her lose respect for you, bit by bit. A woman cannot feel safe with a man who cannot protect his own dignity, because if you cannot protect yourself, how can you protect her? That unspoken question slowly grew in her mind every time you let her cross your lines without consequences. You might have seen her disrespect you. Maybe it was the way she spoke to you. Maybe it was how she tested you. Maybe it was small acts of disregard. Instead of checking her, you stayed silent. You rationalized it away, telling yourself you were being a good man, an understanding partner, a modern and progressive boyfriend. But in reality, you were showing weakness. You were signaling that she could behave however she wanted, and you would still be there no matter what. That is not love. That is fear of losing her, and women can sense that fear. It turns them off at a level so deep they sometimes cannot even explain it. When you lack boundaries, you become soft in her eyes, not soft in a comforting way, but soft in a way that feels unreliable. She cannot fully trust a man who cannot stand up to her. She cannot relax in her feminine if you will not hold the masculine frame and show where the line is drawn. Part of a woman's security comes from knowing her man is strong enough to say no, to push back, to defend himself and his values. She wants to know you have a backbone, because that is what makes her feel that you can protect not just yourself, but her and the relationship as well. Every time you allowed something that crossed your standard, whether it was disrespect, manipulation, or unkindness, you taught her that you had no standard at all. And with no standard, there is no strength. She may have even felt guilty for walking all over you, but she could not help it. Nature will always test boundaries, and you kept failing that test. She lost trust in you because you were supposed to be the mountain, unmoved, unshaken, but instead you were the river, changing course for her at every turn. That is why she could no longer feel attraction, no longer feel safe, no longer feel like you were the man she could look up to. She did not want to become the leader in the relationship. She did not want to constantly push the boundaries because that drained her too. But you left her no choice. You were so worried about being rejected or being labeled controlling that you became passive. And passive men force women to pick up the role you abandoned. She did not want to be the one holding the line, deciding the rules, keeping the standards. She wanted you to hold it firmly and fairly, and you failed to deliver that. When you lose your boundaries, you lose your masculinity. You lose the frame that gives the relationship its structure and security. Women want to trust that a man knows who he is, what he will tolerate, and what he will not. They want to see you hold your space and defend it with quiet strength, not loud threats. That calm, confident protection of your own values is what makes a woman trust you with her heart. And when she cannot trust you with your own, she will never trust you with hers. If you want to break this pattern, you need to rebuild your sense of self-respect. Decide what you stand for, decide what you will allow and what you will not, and then live those boundaries consistently, even if it means a woman pushes back, even if it means she leaves. Because a woman leaving a man with boundaries is far rarer than a woman leaving a man without them. Boundaries do not push women away. They draw them closer because they make her feel protected, valued, and safe. She left because you failed to set and hold your boundaries, and in doing so, you lost the foundation of your masculine power. Let that lesson sink in and promise yourself never to betray your standards again.